In my project, I decided to start by looking at my school's ELL program and some of what I've seen teachers doing in my own school. So some of the good things that I've been seeing in my school in terms of ELL is that the ELL teachers both pull out students and push in. They're very supportive. They come into the classroom and they do the best they can with the time that they're in there. So they try to make sure that our ELL students get both one-on-one time with the ELL teachers and just ELL students to practice just their language skills, and they get time with an ELL teacher in the classroom so they have support in the content areas. I also think that my school does a good job keeping the anxiety amongst ELLs pretty low. All the ELL students I see in the building make friends with all the other students. They never seem to be left out. They always seem to be pretty calm and making friends. And so I think that's good. I think that it seems like they have pretty low anxiety. Um, some of the problems that I'm seeing are that teachers seem to have little training in the ELL if they are not the ELL teacher. So this leads to the fact that when students are not with their ELL teacher, um, students are left on their own, and the regular classroom teacher is not quite sure how to help them. So I see a lot of things like the students, the rigor of their work being lowered, just not having the same expectations, not requiring them to complete certain things because the teachers are not sure how to help them. So this leads me to my focus statement that I decided to work on. My focus statement just has to do with the needs of my school in particular. My focus statement is English language learners need more opportunities for supported practice when using language authentically in content areas. This just stems from the idea that when English language learners are in the classroom, I see in my school that they tend to struggle and not have quite the same expectations as other students. So I think by that providing them with more supported practice in these content areas in the classroom would really benefit these English language learning students. So a little bit more about why I chose this statement. Again, the statement is English language learners need more opportunities supported practice when using language authentically in content areas. First, I just don't think there's not enough individual support for ELLs in the general classroom in my school. When the teacher is not in there with them, then they're just left with their content area teacher, and the expectations are lowered, and that leads to them not meeting content area standards. I teach in a school that's 3 through 5, so the standards are getting a little bit more challenging for students if they don't speak English and they are often not up to content area standards and their expectations are lowered. So, this is a problem that needs to be fixed. I also chose a statement because the research is really clear that we need support for these students, that these students really benefit from things like group work, from being given visuals and added think time. And there's so much research out there about all the kinds of support that can be given that I think it would be really helpful for these supports to be included into more of my school's classrooms. We also see in the 120 Content Strategies book, Reese repeatedly using the term scaffolding. And this is something not done frequently in my district with the ELL students. I think that this is just largely because teachers are not quite sure how to do it or what to do. So, as I delve more into my focus statement, it's going to really just focus a lot about how we can provide supported opportunities for practice in the content areas. And hopefully, these are things that I can bring back to my own school and share with other teachers. So, I came up with 3 big strategies that I think would be helpful in supporting my needs statement and my focus area. If I was going to go talk to teachers, the 3 strategies that I would immediately give them for ways to help ELL learners in the classroom would be utilize group work and purposeful pairing, provide students with a menu of learning strategies, and to use alternative assessments. I chose these three strategies in particular because they are things that maybe the teachers are not initially thinking about. Um, but then I think that these are also strategies that aren't very time consuming. I think that sometimes teachers are hesitant to do a lot of scaffolding because they think it means creating completely new things for each and every student in the classroom, and it doesn't have to be that difficult. So I think that these would be really good three starting points to provide more supported instruction in content area classrooms. First, I want to just look at the research behind why I chose each one of these. So, strategy one says to utilize group work and purposeful pairing. I chose this because in the Yatvin book, she says that ELLs learn best through authentic practice. So, by keeping them in the classroom and pairing them with other students, we're giving them opportunities for authentic real life practice. We're not isolating them in their classroom with other foreign language speakers. We're letting them be a part of the whole classroom, and I think that's the best way for them to work on learning English. Also, in Reese's book, this goes along with principle number 9, which says to provide opportunities for ELLs to negotiate conceptual understandings and explore language uses through classroom interactions. If our students are not in the mainstream classroom, then they are not getting those classroom interactions and they're not learning about all these new things and exploring language with native language learners, which is going to be really important for them. But in order to scaffold it and make it an attainable goal for them, it's really helpful to utilize group work and purposeful pairing. For strategy number 2, which says to provide students with a menu of learning strategies, I thought this would be really helpful because in the Advent book, she talks about 2 different types of ELL students that you always have the student that you might have the student who's shy and quiet and doesn't really want to talk very much, and you might have the student who's really loud and outgoing. These are just 2 types of ELL students, and then students differ further just on their personalities and who they are. So providing them with a menu of learning strategies and giving them options about how they can learn would be really helpful for each student, and to have something maybe in front of them, to have a list they can refer back to, so when they feel stuck, they have something to do. The other piece of research that I found supporting this strategy is Principle 6 in the Reese book, where she says to actively teach learning strategies to give students a menu of ways to process and learn new information. Clearly, I came up with this strategy almost directly from the Reese book. I thought this was just going to be very helpful for any ELL learner, especially, but really for any student. If you give any student a list of learning strategies, I'm sure it would be beneficial for them. Finally, the third strategy I wanted to look at to support my focus statement and my goal for my school is number 3, which says to use alternative assessments. We spoke largely about this in the course, and it was one of the last units. I thought it was really interesting. In the Yashvin book, she gives the principle number 4 that says that students should use multimodal expression. So she suggests that ELL students should get to present their work in all different means, because sometimes orally or written is not the way that they can convey what they know. So we should have a toolbox of other ideas and alternative assessments that these students can use. It also goes along with Principle 11 from Reese, which says to use scaffolding strategies to assess content knowledge separately from English language knowledge so students can show what they know. So she says scaffolding strategies, but alternative assessments allow us to do this when we can do things like draw a picture or use portfolios where students are not necessarily bound by their language skills. We're able to see what they know in content areas. And within my school, like I said, I feel like expectations are lowered and they're not really my students aren't meeting content area standards within the classroom. And I think part of this is just teachers don't even know how to assess to figure out what these kids know and what they don't know, because they give them a standard assessment and then these students do poorly because it's well above their language level. So by giving teachers some options of alternate assessments, they can at least begin to see where students are in their content area knowledge, and they can use that information to make sure that they're meeting standards. So I came up with those three strategies that I would ideally suggest to teachers in my school to help them accomplish my focus statement of providing more supported instruction within the content areas. But they're pretty vague, so I want to just come up with some very concrete examples. So I did a little further research into each one of these different strategies to find some examples. So for the first strategy about utilizing group work and purposeful pairing, I found that Snyder and Fenner said that these were some techniques that you can use with group work and purposeful pairing, that it helps students to come to the discussion. If students come to the discussion with their group or with their partner prepared to speak, so we can do this by providing them with graphic organizers or various note-taking sheets, so that when they go to speak with their group or their partner, they don't feel anxious. They have something to guide their conversation. You often need to teach these students how to use appropriate body language for discussions. Sometimes between different cultures, their body just might be, the way they hold their body might be different from here in the United States. So recognizing some of those cultural differences and making sure we're teaching our ELLs and our mainstream everyday children how to hold their body, how to keep eye contact, and how to have a polite conversation. We need to make sure we teach them that they should participate by taking turns and what this looks like. And we should be helping them to make connections to what others have said. I think sometimes our ELL students have good ideas and they're not really sure how to say them. So this was a really good list of just sentence starters that we could give our ELLs when they're in groups and partnerships, so they can focus on if they want to restate, agree, disagree, ask a clarifying question, add to an idea, or make connections. I think giving them some of these sentence starters would be really helpful for our ELLs when they're working with these groups and partnerships, especially when they're new to the language. Coming prepared with some papers, with some notes, and an idea of what they want to say, and then having something that tells them exactly how to say it could be very helpful and eliminate a lot of their anxiety when they're in group and partnerships. And we know that group and partnerships are really helpful to ELLs because they are using their oral language skills. For number 2, we have provide students with a menu of learning strategies. This was just something that I found from Harris, and it is just an example of what a menu of learning strategies might look like. This has a bunch of learning strategies that you can do by yourself, that you can do with others in the classroom, and just learning about your own learning. And it's got a nice little checklist of things that students have done, are doing now, or plan to do, just so that they can get an idea of what it looks like to learn and interact with new information. So some of these are really interesting, like making a study schedule, writing out questions, making flashcards, things like participating in a study group or exchanging class notes. These are all just options of things that students can do when they feel like they're a little stuck. And I think that having a list of things they can do would be really helpful for them as they're learning English. It's one less thing that they need to think about. And examples of exactly what I would give teachers in my school for alternative assessments would be, I put together this whole big list. Some of them come from our own learning within this class. Some of them came from the Penn State College of Education. But I think giving teachers in my school a list of alternative assessments, such as observation, performance assessments, sorting activities, creating models, graphic organizers, self-assessments, rubrics, differentiated scoring, portfolios, and conferencing would be really helpful for them, because they'd have this list of what they could do with students right on hand and just give them some more options than what they currently have. So here's my works cited at the end. Oops. And yeah, so I just really want to take this time to talk about how we can really provide teachers with some supported strategies for their ELLs while they are in the classroom, because I found this to be something that I think my school in particular really struggled with. So these would be the big topics that I would like to suggest to my future teachers that I've learned from this class.